Hey everybody, this is Ron, and today we feature a lost episode, an actual bona fide lost episode. How do you lose an episode? Well, you save it in the wrong directory, and by you, I mean me. So please sit back and enjoy the lost episode about Duck Soup by the Marx Brothers.
Hey everybody, this is Dan,
And this is Ron.
and this is a nominee questionable movies.
Yay! Welcome back, everyone.
Yay.
Today we watched Duck Soup, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. That's one of the what am I up to now? 23 or something like that?
I
27?
mean, you're the one with the spread. Ron keeps an actual spreadsheet of this, so we can verify. I usually just pull it out of my ass. Like this is one of my 10 favorite movies of all time. You ask me on a different day, I will give you many different answers to that question. There's a few things that are always going to be on there, but Ron actually is accountable on this
Yeah.
front.
I count them. I've got 22. I've got a 22 right now.
And
So
is Duck Soup on the? Is it in the 22?
Duck Soup is in the 22. It was one of the first to make it into the 22.
All
In
right.
fact, it might be the first of the 22. I am 100% sure, not might be, I'm 100% sure that it is the first of the 22 that I had ever seen. It's one of the first movies I'd ever seen. I saw it when I was probably, I don't know, probably 10 years old.
And on that note, today for the podcast, we watched Duck Soup, directed by Leo McCarey, I believe. But the guiding creative force here is obviously the Marx Brothers.
Yeah, this isn't Leo McCarey's movie. This is a Marx
No.
Brothers movie that
Yeah,
was
this is a Marx
directed by
Brothers.
Leo
Yeah.
McCarey.
It's like those Buster Keaton movies. It says like directed by so and so, but it was, well, I guess like Keaton was actually handling the camera a lot more than the Marx Brothers were. Keaton actually ended up writing gags for the Marx Brothers when he was out of work in the late 30s, early 40s.
Oh, no kidding. No
Yeah,
kidding.
there's a few Marx Brothers movies that recycle gags from Buster Keaton movies. So you say it was the first one you saw. When was the first time you saw Duck Soup?
I saw it around 1980.
Okay.
So
Definitely before I saw it.
first movies I remember seeing, or the earliest movies I remember seeing are Mary Poppins, Superman,
Hmm.
the Muppet movie, and Duck Soup. Those are the four I can remember.
That's really strange because like 2 out of 4 of those are the earliest movies I remember
Really?
seeing. Mary Poppins and the Muppet movie and Home Alone. I watched Home Alone like an ungodly number of times as a small child.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Um,
The Gods Must Be Crazy. I remember that one from
I don't think I ever saw that one.
watching around the same time. And Gone with the Wind. My friend and I had gone across town to go see a movie about cartoon characters. It was like a cartoon Olympics or something, but not Laugh
Laugh
Olympics.
Olympics.
But it wasn't Laugh Olympics. It was
Okay.
something else. Some cartoon sports. It wasn't any characters that I recognized, but they were just sort of vaguely animal cartoons. So we went to that theater to go see it, and it wasn't playing. You know what was playing instead? Gone with the Wind. So
I've still
yeah, I
never
guess
actually, confession, I've still never actually seen Gone with the Wind all the way through.
really.
Nope.
Well, now you can watch it on. Is it on AMC? With
I have the disc somewhere too, which is like
no. This is relevant. It's you can watch it now on AMC with an introduction that puts it in a historical context.
oh, that would be handy.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I kind of like the reputation that came to me through like over time was basically like this is like the more subtle Birth of a Nation, but I think that might be overly harsh. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to see it to actually.
it's not quite Birth of a Nation, but it does give this notion of near utopian South, and in which the slaves like being part of they consider themselves part of the family, and they like being in menial subservient positions.
Right.
So that's a big part of it.
Mm. And that was a
And I
big part of
definitely,
movies in general for a very long time.
what was that?
That was a big part of movies in general for a very very long time.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of like musical numbers that would have played in a theater if you were seeing, say, like Duck Soup, early talkie stuff. Like I remember seeing some of these because I went to a thing where Kim Deitch showed a bunch of like he has like this insane collection of antique cat cartoons.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of the inspiration for the cat cartoon episode we did. I think I talked about that on the episode, but yeah, he showed, was it the Boswell sisters, When It's Sleepy Time Down South, kind of like a proto music video. The Boswell sisters were kind of like a much more musically talented version of the Andrews sisters, but like 10 years earlier. But yeah, endless imagery in these movies of the pastoral South, chilling on the plantation, taking care of enslaved humans. It's sort of like they were like overgrown children or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but fortunately there's not. Duck Soup has escaped history relatively unscathed. I think there was like one pretty offensive joke in there, but
Yeah,
you
but
don't
it
have
was
like
fun.
people in the background running around in blackface like you got in a lot of those early Buster Keaton movies.
No, no, none of that. No blackface.
I can't remember if there's blackface in any Chaplin movies. There's probably blackface in some of the shorts, but I don't remember it in any of the features.
Yeah, yeah. But no blackface in this movie.
Nope.
One racist joke,
One racist joke and one like
which I still don't understand.
not the best joke in the movie by a long stretch. But let's talk about what's good in this movie because there's a lot to love here. I can't say that I've seen every Marx Brothers movie. In fact, I feel like out of early comedy stuff, the Marx Brothers I am probably the least familiar with out of the big ones. I've seen probably 3 or 4 Marx Brothers movies.
Okay.
I watched a lot of You Bet Your Life, though. Like, I used to get those public domain things, those DVDs you used to get at the dollar store where it would just be a bunch of public domain You Bet Your Life episodes.
The Groucho Marx game show.
Yeah, the one where he's just basically heckling the contestants for 20 minutes at a time, and I used to love that. That was like,
Yeah, it's really a Groucho Marx routine with a little bit of game show punctuating it.
yeah,
Or kind
it's
of.
like more driven by personality than the actual game.
Right, right. The game's
He's
not
like the anti Alex Trebek.
What do you mean?
Well, so Alex Trebek. I mean, granted, Alex Trebek has been on everybody's minds this week. I think because
He just said.
he died. Yeah, that'll tend to do that. And I feel like a lot of like Jeopardy is not a show that is built around Alex Trebek's personality. And in fact, a lot of why Alex Trebek was so effective on Jeopardy is that he's a fairly inobtrusive presence. Like he shows up, he's professional, he's what you need him to be in the role. He's not Groucho Marx. Nobody's watching Jeopardy because they want to see what Alex Trebek does next outside of like that comfort of repetition. Whereas like You Bet Your Life, nobody's watching You Bet Your Life for the game show element. I couldn't even tell you how the game show part even worked on You Bet Your Life.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. All I remember is a duck would come, like a duck with a Groucho Marx face would come down on a string or something like that with a pet question in its bill or something like that.
Right.
But that's all I remember, and lots of Groucho Marx talking.
I think it was interesting to go back to this one because you can see like this was an enormously influential movie on a lot of later movies, B, like stand-up comedy as we know it did not exist when this movie was released. And Groucho Marx is one of those major formative figures of what we would consider stand-up comedy.
Without being stand-up comedy per se.
Yeah, but it's like very, very verbally focused humor. Like he was really well positioned for when everything moved to talkies.
Right.
In a way that, Buster Keaton, etc. were not, because Buster Keaton, he sounds like this.
Well, they were vaudeville though, right?
They were vaudeville, yeah. I think almost everybody in like 20s and 30s cinema usually started out on stage or in vaudeville, give or take. Judy Garland started out as a traveling vaudeville entertainer. Obviously, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin,
Yeah, yeah.
Fred Astaire.
I
You
just
know,
I just couldn't remember if they were on vaudeville or if they did local.
yeah, no, they were definitely
stuff, right?
vaudeville stars, and you can tell that in like a lot of the routines in the film up to the end. The last 5 minutes, we'll talk about that later, I think, because that's like a whole other can of worms. But a lot of the things you can see like how they would be performed on a stage. So like the famous mirror sequence where you've got Chico and Harpo are both dressed up as Groucho in a nightcap and gown, and they're doing basically like a long riff on one of the first exercises they have you do in an acting class to kind of get an awareness of your body, which is mirror somebody else. Like you both move, but you have to move in sync. So you have to be like hyper aware of what you're doing. Obviously, they take this way beyond that in the sequence.
Right. They take it to the point where they're doing stuff together that they would never see.
Yeah, and you could totally see it working in like a vaudeville house or a theatrical setting.
Right, right.
Same thing with like Chico and Harpo kicking the other peanut vendor in the butt. That whole sequence could totally have been. But at the same time, I think you see a lot of. There's a lot in this movie that is very different than any of the film comedy that came before it.
Other Marx Brothers movies. I don't know where this stands though in terms of in the order of.
Well, in terms of Marx Brothers movies, there's definitely other Marx Brothers movies before it. I'm gonna guess there's stuff going on here that wasn't in the earlier ones because, like, it usually, if you look at any film canon list, depending on the size of the list, there's always going to be one Marx Brothers movie and it's Duck Soup. If there's two Marx Brothers movies, the other one is always Night at the Opera. But I believe this was like midway in their collective career as a group.
They had 5 movies before this.
Yeah.
Or they had 5 feature-length movies before this. So this wasn't Night at the Opera comes after this. They had
Coconut. Right, Night at the Opera is the first one after they moved from Universal to
from Paramount to
or from Paramount to Universal, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Coconuts, Animal Crackers, Monkey Business, Horse Feathers, and Duck Soup. And then Night at the Opera, A Day at the Races, and so on. So.
Right. And I've never seen Horse Feathers or Coconuts or Animal Crackers, so I couldn't speak to those. But in terms of what I have seen, this is the first film comedy that seems to work intentionally on discontinuities and just straight up absurdism.
What do you mean discontinuities?
So what's funny about a lot of the humor is that it verges on not making sense or just outright does not make sense. Okay. They're playing with the fact that towards the end, literally the continuity of the images is just completely thrown out. Like you're seeing footage that like as you were pointing out, Groucho's outfit changes literally every shot, seemingly in the end. We have no actual sense of the geography of these various made up countries. There's things at various points that suggest everything from it being the American South to Germany to Eastern Europe somewhere to anywhere.
Well, so now that we've reached... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say now that we've reached the end, why don't we talk about what the movie's about?
Oh, yeah. So you want to...
No, go for it.
Okay, so basically this rich woman who doesn't really know particularly well what's good for her, apparently. She holds the government of a country called Fredonia hostage and says, I won't keep giving you money unless you make this guy named Rufus T. Firefly seemingly the dictator. We don't get much insight into how the actual form of government works.
Well, it's Fredonia, the land of the free.
Right.
And He's the autocrat of Fredonia.
Yeah, and every country displays itself as to its citizenry and to its rulers, like this is the most free place on earth. And
Right. And so how does it start off? It starts off, or when Rufus T. Firefly, Groucho Marx, first starts off telling us what he's going to be doing, the rules of his administration, they're about every kind of restriction of freedom as he can come up with. So no chewing gum is allowed.
And then he goes and
No
does all
whistling.
the things immediately afterward.
Right. Whistling is forbidden. So then he whistles the next verse or the next line. Chewing gum is forbidden, and then he makes a point of chewing as big a face as he can. So
Right.
And
like it, and then from there, what happens? So Chico and Harpo are introduced after the well, no, there's more in the musical sequence, because the musical sequence happens, and then I think it's just Groucho Marx insulting Margot Dumont. Is that her name?
Margaret Dumont.
Margaret Dumont.
So yeah, insulting. As in she plays the straight man. She is the straight man. She doesn't crack a smile once, no matter how much he makes fun of her, or how much he makes jokes at her expense. That sounds a little softer than making fun of her, even though he's making fun of her. That's exactly what he's doing.
Right. She always just kind of vaguely looks like she thinks he's flirting with her, which is kind of perfect for what the movie needs.
Right. He's flirting with her, and she just doesn't get, what the flirt is. Not always realizing that he's making fun of her. I was gonna say
the still object that brings the motion into focus.
Yeah, there we go. So if I remember correctly, part of the reason that she's able to do it all without smirking, without like holding back laughter or anything else, I mean, because she's a professional, but also because she didn't get the jokes. Like she didn't understand what was funny. And the ones to say, "Oh, these are bad jokes," was like, I don't get it. Wait, that's a joke? I don't get it. So yeah, but remember back when we did Enamorada? This would have been a good opportunity for me to go back and not to show that I'm right. Well, no, to find any evidence for that. So not expecting that there's evidence out there saying I'm wrong, but finding anything to support that, of like where I heard that in the first place. So
yeah, I'd be interested to read about the production history of this.
Yeah, well, because this isn't the only time that she played their foil.
Right. I mean, like usually those like Jerry Lewis has this one older lady that always plays like the straight woman in his movies. Not in Artists and Models, but like she's in The Ladies' Man. I'm pretty sure she's like the receptionist at the school in the Nutty Professor. I could not tell you, but yeah, she's just very good at looking offended at Jerry Lewis, and so she had steady employment for life pretty much. And yeah, I'm trying to think, or like, I guess it's not really the same thing, but like the way that Edward Everett Horton is in all those Fred Astaire movies is sort of his. Well, no, that's a whole other kind of film relationship. I guess like, yeah, because Margaret Dumont's not really his sidekick. It's a straight man, yeah. I'm overcomplicating it. It's a straight man relationship.
Yeah. What's another word for that isn't gendered? Because I know there's comic foil.
Comic foil, very shiny.
Sounds a little too serious.
Laughless lady.
Well, see, now we're back to gender.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm trying, and now I'm thinking of word like laughless and unfunny and all that, and they all sound negative. But it's the straight person. No, see, again, straight person, because it's also
dour human.
What was that?
Dour human.
Well, they make it sound like she's so like miserable.
Yeah, she's not really that like compared to a lot of the people that play this role in these kinds of movies. She seems like she's having fun. She just seems like she doesn't have any idea what's going on, which, to be fair, like in 1934, this was some pretty wild out there shit.
Right. She's in a different movie, which is exactly what this needs. Right. The Marx Brothers are in a different movie from their own movie. They're they're their own force. The movie exists to prop them up.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
giving
sort of
them
like
credit.
how like in any of those like Clark Gable, Cary Grant screwball comedy romances like His Girl Friday or whatever, the female love interest always has to have a fiance or something who is the most boring human being on earth, and there's like 3 or 4 guys that would always play that role. Like they had the best job security in Hollywood for a long time because they just, but their entire job was to just be like boring.
Although, Dan, now I've seen enough of these to know that that's not always the case. It's not always about a woman with a boring fiance finding a much more interesting guy.
Mm.
Some of them don't involve that kind of plot.
Oh, like screwball comedies?
They don't all revolve around divorce or divorces and
Broken off engagements.
Yeah.
A
So
lot of them do, but yeah, not all of them, no.
I finally watched Sullivan's Travels. Oh no, I guess there is a divorce storyline in there too. Oh geez.
Sullivan's Trail, that's a good one. I haven't seen that in forever.
Gosh, okay, even that one, and it plays like such a small role, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. Although in this case, it's the wife. It's him wanting to be divorced from the wife, and the wife plays a very small role. Mm. So it's
always about like finding joy in insanity, or maybe not insanity, but just sort of this elevating the entertainment value of having strange people around you versus the entertainment value of having a lot of money because everybody was in the Depression. Uh-huh. And I wouldn't necessarily even classify, like I wouldn't say the Marx Brothers are part of the screwball comedy genre. I think they're like outside of it to an extent. Like there's similarities and overlap.
And there's no romance.
There's no romance ever. Yeah.
The relationship between Mrs. Teasdale and Rufus D. Firefly can hardly be called romantic.
It's one of the least romantic relationships in the cinema.
Yeah.
And like Groucho Marx he makes all these lewd comments, but he still comes across as this almost like sexless figure.
Yeah.
And then like the most overtly sexual thing in this movie, I think, is when Harpo keeps trying to put his leg over the peanut vendor guy's leg. Uh-huh. Which is not, there's no attempts at pathos whatsoever. Like it's right, because like in a Chaplin or Keaton movie, they want you to feel some kind of relation to, or at least sympathy for, the protagonist. The Marx Brothers do not care about that whatsoever. Keaton or Chaplin, they want you to, or like any of the early screwball comedy, like this probably came out, I think this came out the same year as It Happened One Night. So this actually would be because like It Happened, well, no, there's screwball comedies before It Happened One Night. It Happened One Night is like the first romantic comedy in the sense that we understand it now. Right. But
that's where we get the first meet cute.
The first meet cute. And
It Happened One Night came out a year later.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out on 34 and this was 33. No, there is no tug at your heartstrings scene in most Marx Brothers movies.
Right. There's like no sentimentality. There's no like when we watch The Gold Rush, like half of that is about just feeling bad for this Charlie Chaplin guy getting like stood up by this girl, right? Or whatever. And you can't really imagine that happening in a Marx Brothers movie.
You know what? Actually, that's not entirely true, because there's I forget which movies. It might be Night at the Opera is the one in particular I'm thinking of, but it'll be a straight couple, a straight man and a straight female. But I meant in terms of like playing a straight man to the comedians. They're the not funny ones, but they're the sweet romantic couple.
Well, that's how you know they're not homosexuals, is because they're not funny.
Does that mean that but that doesn't mean that the Marx Brothers
straight man? Sorry, that was a bad joke.
Oh, got it.
Straight man, straight woman.
No, that didn't work. Yeah.
No, but yeah.
No, that's not.
Whereas in the Fred Astaire movie, you can tell that Edward Everett Horton has like the world's largest crush on Fred Astaire, and that's half the appeal.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Right. I mean, like, you ever notice that in those movies?
I haven't seen enough Fred Astaire movies to.
Oh, okay. It's
Yeah.
like there's him and Ginger Rogers, and I think he likes watching Ginger Rogers dance, but there's more sparks between him and Edward Everett Horton, who was the narrator on Rocky and Bullwinkle much later in his life.
Oh, okay. Oh, neat.
Um,
But so we got as far as Rufus T. Firefly is now in
oh,
power.
yeah.
And then there's Ambassador Trentino of Sylvania, the neighboring country, who wants to take over. So he's been trying to get some the labor leaders to or agitators. That's what they call him, the agitator. He's actually listed in the credits as agitator. But to try and get revolution going so that they could step in. But it doesn't work because Rufus T. Firefly is just immensely popular.
Right.
So-
We never quite figure out why, but on the other hand, given the last 4 years, that seems more real than if we did figure out why.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, but that's nothing new, right?
Right. Well, apparently not if 1930, 33,
Yeah,
I keep saying 34.
We're witnessing it firsthand, but we're witnessing firsthand what we've been told and learned and studied all along. Just here we are, like experiencing it directly.
Right, and there's like never character motivation in at least this movie only exists as a thing to be mocked or shot down. Right, like the only characters with straightforward motivations are the ambassador of Sylvania and Margaret Dumont, and they need to believe in something or want something in order to contrast how little what the Marx Brothers are doing makes any particular sense or follows any kind of clear logic.
Yeah, they're just chaotic.
They're chaotic neutral.
Chaotic, yes,
they
chaotic
say.
neutral. Yeah. They generate chaos. They are chaos. I guess they were actually again, I can't remember where I heard this from, but that they were like all over the set. It was impossible to get them to show up on time because they were just engaging in wacky hijinks all over. Which, as opposed to, say, Buster Keaton, who was much more controlled. And
yeah, you kind of get the sense of like Leo McCarey, if there's a thing that he should be given a lot of credit for, it's sort of getting it all into one bottle.
Yeah. So here we could see you actually can put lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, and it feels like that. It's like it's a pretty disjointed movie. Like there's not, and I mean, granted, that's like a fairly common, like comedies, generally speaking, tend to be a lot less fluid than dramas, just because the whole basis of a lot of forms of humor is this kind of disruption of expectations. So you're going to expect some choppiness.
Yeah.
But
you get all throughout, you just get parts of their gags, parts of their comedy routines.
Yeah, it's almost like the first, or it wouldn't be the first, but like it's one of the earliest pure comedies, I guess, where there's no other. The only motivation in the film is put as many gags on film as possible, make the audience laugh as much as possible. Outside of like early two-reel silence.
What was that?
Outside of like two-reel silent film comedy shorts, like Fatty Arbuckle kind of stuff. Like a lot of that'll just be, somebody accidentally kicks somebody and then somehow cops are chasing everybody and it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But in feature length, like this is the first real view we get of the kind of style that would become popular in like a lot of television sketch comedy. The movie Airplane wouldn't exist without this movie. Mad Magazine, early Mad Magazine, was very clearly and heavily influenced by what goes on, particularly I would say at the end of this movie. Because that was a huge, like an early Mad Magazine, Will Elder would change outfits of characters constantly, or like there's literally no priority given to the continuity of images if there's something that's funnier that could be done by disrupting said continuity.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the end of the movie, we've made it as
yeah, we're not even like
Ambassador Trentino. So Ambassador Trentino hires two spies, Ciccolini and Pinky, also known as Chico Marx and Harper Marx, or the Italian one and the silent one.
Ciccolini, I think he's supposed to be silent Italian, but
Pinky. It's Ciccolini and Pinky.
Oh yeah, but Ciccolini doesn't sound particularly Jewish.
No, but neither does Chico.
This is true. This is true.
Or
wait, oh right, yeah. Long day carrying vinyl flooring stuff.
I don't think any of the Marx Brothers first names sound particularly Jewish.
It's true, yeah. Zeppo's in this one. I think this might be the last one that has Zeppo. At the end when they're all playing the banjos, he's the fourth guy playing a banjo.
Dan, I know who Zeppo is. He was in the movie throughout. Did you not notice?
I couldn't tell if it was the fourth Marx brother until the end when they specifically only have the four of them playing the banjos.
Yeah. He's throughout. He plays.
I had like suspicions.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And then Gummo sat this one out.
Yeah. Was Gummo in any of them? No. Okay.
No, but he did have a film named after him much later.
Yes.
Very different film.
Yeah. But now that I think about it, I think Zeppo was supposed to be Zeppo has the beautiful singing voice. And I think he was supposed to be the sexy one. So the sexy
one, and that is such a funny thing. like given the
sexy Marx Brothers,
the weight and momentum of history as it regards the Marx Brothers, the idea of the sexy Marx brother is kind of. Although I guess that's probably why he didn't stick around in show business quite as long.
Do you ever notice how similar they look?
Like, I mean, especially when they're all wearing those nightcaps.
Right.
And they're like almost indistinguishable.
Right. Part of the reason they're all wearing nightcaps and the big grease paint mustache, and the glasses and the cigar. So they all look like Groucho Groucho in a nightgown. And they look almost identical because they really did look so similar as their full bodies, and it's so you can see what a difference the facial expressions and even Chico's
and hair I think is a big part of it.
Yeah. Change the hair a bit, change the facial expressions, change the talking style. And you got four very different looking people. One of them who looks fairly nondescript that you don't even realize that he's one of them.
Right. Zeppo looks like in any other movie he would have been the leading man.
Right. But here he's like what a leading man might look like. And say he's subservient, not subservient. Is that the right word? So he's subservient to Groucho. He works for him.
And he doesn't get many lines. He doesn't get much screen time.
But he gets a song.
He does get a song.
He gets so the song near the end in which they sing about that they're going to go to war is one of my favorite musical sequences of any movie. But I also get a real kick out of the song that Zeppo sings, or Zeppo and Margaret Dumont sings. So the two the two straightest people on the screen, and they start singing about what time Firefly is going to show up at. When the clock on the wall strikes 10, all you loyal ladies and you patriotic men. And then and several times they sing about when the clock on the wall strikes 10. And like they're talking about, it's like they're looking at their watches and like, yeah, okay, let's throw in another verse. It's not quite time yet, so okay, how about another verse? So it's not quite that self-aware.
And I'm kind of curious if they did any film. I mean, I'm pretty sure Zeppo wasn't in any non-Marx Brothers movies, but I could be wrong. Margaret Dumont, I'm kind of curious what her other acting work looked like, because she seemed like she was pretty good at doing that, like as you put it, I'm the matronly woman in this 30s movie thing, like the kind of generalized shtick that you see in a lot of those.
Uh-huh.
She must have had some career outside of the Marx Brothers.
Okay, here. I'm going to read the mini bio from on IMDb. Now, who knows the person that wrote it? It was picked as the IMDb version of an official bio, but it's written by somebody named Michael Brook. I don't know if that's a famous movie biographer
Not that I've heard of, but
or just a fan. But here's what it says. Margaret Dumont will probably consider it a tragedy that she is best known for her performances as the ultimate straight woman in 7 of the Marx Brothers films, including most of their best. By all accounts, she never understood their jokes, off screen and on, which is, of course, a major reason why she's so funny. Apart from a small role in the 1917 Dickens adaptation, she spent her early career on stage, ending up with the Marxes in the late 1920s in the stage versions of The Coconuts, 1929, and Animal Crackers, 1930, and was given a Paramount contract at the same time as they were. She played familiar roles alongside other great comedians, including W.C. Fields, Laurel and Hardy, and Jack Benny, and also played straight dramatic parts, her chief love, but few of them made much impact. It is as Groucho Marx's foil that she ranks among the immortals, and she died shortly after being reunited with him on the Hollywood Palace in 1964. Yeah. So okay, so
can you
here's somebody
imagine
else.
like if your job for most of your life was to not get jokes? Like that,
Yeah,
that has to be such a strange existence.
and it's not like she did it once, hated it, and never did it again. She did it 7 times on screen and 2 other times on stage.
Right, and then also like I can't imagine that her role was probably that hugely different if she was working with W.C. Fields.
And Laurel and Hardy.
And Laurel and Hardy were pretty wild and out there.
Yeah,
It's just such a funny.
their world used to always fall apart, right?
Hmm.
Everything just started coming crashing.
Right, everything breaks, everything.
But not Margaret Dumont.
Not Margaret Dumont. She just keeps on trucking.
So the plot. So we've got Chico and Harper play spies for the Sylvanian spies. There's a whole routine in which Chico is selling peanuts. There's a lemonade seller next to him, and there's gags all about that. I don't know what to say. And there's gags abound. How's that?
Oh yeah.
Lots of gags. And they're right under the terrace of Rufus T. Firefly. So he had just sacked his Secretary of War. So he invites Chico up to hire him as the Secretary of War. Blah blah blah.
Oh, weird. Okay, I thought so. There's a company that makes light bulbs and a bunch of different kinds of electronics, right? Called Sylvania.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way they named the company after the fictitious country in this movie. I'm not seeing anything that says that they did, but the company started in. Oh wait, never mind. 1931. So yeah, so it's playing off the Sylvania light bulb company and vacuum tube company. So it would have been like a known brand name. So it would have been kind of like calling a country in a movie now like General Emirates or something, but it always says GE on the flag and official materials.
Yeah. Well, and part of the joke is Transylvania.
Oh wait, yeah, okay. I didn't even think about that part. Fredonia. That's when the South secedes. That's what they can call their new country of.
How about when the blue states secede, we can call ourselves Fredonia.
That seems ominous.
Given
the well, I guess we haven't gotten to the end of the movie yet, so this is a short movie. Like you should just watch. If any of this sounds even vaguely interesting, just go watch it.
Yeah, we're actually almost done telling the plot. So several times, the ambassador and Rufus T. Firefly get into a tiff, in which Rufus T. Firefly is insulted by Ambassador Trentino, and they keep threatening war. Chico goes before a tribunal. And again, which is the court scene is full of gags that just okay, now it's time for parts of the Marx Brothers comedy act.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like everything is a set piece, and maybe that's part of what is special about this movie is that it's one of the first sound comedies that's entirely comedic set pieces.
Mm,
Like the plot is so it's very obvious that the plot is the last consideration on every person making this. Like every person making this, they're worried that okay, we need to get the Marx Brothers act in the purest form possible. We need to have a wraparound so that the gags make some sense. Maybe some objects to give context to jokes. Beyond that, the plot is just sort of it's there when it's convenient, I guess, which can be a strong strategy in making a comedy.
right. Yeah, in the court scene. Okay, we need the repartee between Chico and Groucho. So we need them near each other and talking to each other. So I know we'll make it a court scene, and for this for the trial, Rufus D. Firefly will also be the prosecutor.
Mm,
Boom. We've got them next to each other and talking. Now let's just throw out some gags.
right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's no like coherent um I think it works as satire because there's so little attention put to consistency basically. Like a lot of more traditionally structured satires, there's a specific thing that it's supposed to be satirizing. You can draw a lot of parallels with some kind of real life event or popular piece of fiction or film. And I think here they're able to go after a much bigger target because they're sort of conflating every war, every bad leader of a country ever into one big soup. Um,
Yeah, I see what you did there.
yeah, I'm still not entirely sure why it's called duck soup outside of that picture of the ducks in the stew at the beginning, but
Yeah, I
maybe
don't
it's
know.
like on brand because the previous ones are like animal crackers and cocoa nuts, so
Duck
animal
soup.
theme. I don't know.
Here, I'm looking at dictionary.com. Duck soup, an easily accomplished task or assignment, a cinch to succeed, as in fixing this car is going to be duck soup. The expression gained currency as the title of a hilarious popular movie by the Marx Brothers. The original illusion has been lost, early 1900s. So, it actually means something.
Huh. Yeah, that must be like very outdated slang. I don't think I've ever heard it used outside the context of the Marx Brothers.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely that slang
Also,
is
like,
definitely
not
not
sure
with us.
what's so easy about. I've never made it, but like, I don't know. It seems like it would be a lot easier to make like chicken soup.
No, you
I
make
don't know.
chicken soup but with a duck.
Duck soup. Yeah, I guess because the duck's really fatty, so maybe it like flavors the soup on its own.
Yeah, yeah. So you need to do even less than you do with chicken soup.
Hmm.
So how it's yeah. All right. Chicken
If there's
soup
any
is
like professional chefs listening, I don't know
explain.
because it seems like if I go to a restaurant or something, right? If they have, I don't know if I've ever been to one where they specifically had duck soup on the menu, but like duck dishes. Oh, I guess that probably comes down to the price of ducks, but it seems like they're not the easiest thing in the world to prepare. Or maybe just like we're all out of practice cooking ducks. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't cooked any ducks lately. I'll have to think about it the next time I'm cooking ducks and chicken in the same meal.
Hmm.
So remainder of the story during well, we've got the court scene, and then Ambassador Trantino pops in. There's one last tiff, and he says, "This is war." And so now there's a whole musical number about going to war. Fredona is going to war is one of the lyrics, in which they do they switch the musical style at least 5 different times. Um,
Right, and then everybody sort of almost convulses like the screwball comedy equivalent of speaking in tongues at the end of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Number.
And then we've got the war scene, which is we see them wear outfits, especially it was specifically Groucho, but I think they all do somewhat. But he switches military uniforms from throughout history.
Yeah, he's like dressed as everything from the Kaiser to General Custer to Davy Crockett.
Yeah, yeah,
and there's probably more I'm missing in that.
yeah. And the
There's a
whole thing is
lot
just
of cuts. It's like much more rapidly edited than the rest of the film, which of course makes sense because it's a battle sequence.
right, right. And it's a very chaotic war,
Hmm.
which we see very few spaces. Most of it is from inside of one house.
Right, and then we get this, I'm guessing it was a scale model they must have blown up, but every time artillery hits the house, like you get this exterior of part of a house exploding, but it really doesn't look like it's the same house,
Uh-huh.
which is, of course, going back to the mismatch is the important.
Right, right. It doesn't, yeah. You don't want it to look too professional. You don't want it to be too exact. Or
Right, there's something funnier about like crudely just illustrating, like when he calls for reinforcements and we get stock footage. And I can't remember if I mentioned it, but like I mentioned to Ron before we were recording that I think it's the first time I've seen stock footage, or the earliest example of stock footage used for the fact that it is stock footage, like consciously acknowledged stock footage
yeah,
of
yeah.
like what is it, like something from an old war movie, something from
Let's see. We see the fire trucks,
the fire trucks, right?
police, the police and the motorcycles. We've got marathon, crew, a bunch of divers, and then elephants, monkeys, dolphins. I think that covers it. Uh, yeah, all coming all in response to an SOS, to help save Groucho and the rest.
Mm.
But yeah, none of it looks progressively progressively more and more like stock footage, progressively more like it doesn't belong. Like,
Yeah, none of it looks like it's lit or shot like anything else in the movie, which I think is also interesting in that like the giant set piece at the end of most earlier comedies would be a chase sequence.
the
And you have just sort of this like written off like parody of a chase sequence, or the sort of visual language of the chase sequence in that montage of the stock footage. Like I mean, technically the Buster Keaton the General, that's literally just one long chase sequence,
hmm.
outside of like 5 minutes in the beginning.
Oh, interesting. Right.
Buster Keaton, Seven Chances. There's the thing where he's got all the women dressed in wedding gowns chasing him down a mountain, throwing rocks at him.
Cannonball Run and Cannonball Run 2.
Right, the end of the Freshman with Harold Lloyd, he's getting chased through the college football field. I think there's at least the Kid Brother. I'm pretty sure ends with It's been a long time since I saw any of those Harold Lloyd movies, but
The French Connection.
the French Connection. Was there a chase sequence? I've never seen the French Connection. Classic American comedy, though.
It's got a famous chase sequence in it. That's
Okay.
if not the whole thing as a chase sequence. No, it's famous for the chase for the chasing. But no, it's not a comedy. Well, the remake is, but the original is not.
There was a remake of the French.
Yeah, but it's
I
spelled
missed
with
two French Connections.
it's spelled with a K, and I don't know. No, there is no remake of the French Connection that I'm aware of. Yeah. So Marx Brothers. So did you think it was funny?
Oh yeah, I was laughing. Yeah, you were. We were. I think this was the first film in a while where we kept the mics on for most of the time when we were on video chat
Uh-huh.
during the movie.
'Cause we had to hear the laughter.
Yeah, because it has to be a community. And I think the other thing is like the last time I saw this, it was probably on like a small TV on a VHS, and it does make like a big, like the communal aspect, and just like I'm kind of noticing the size of a screen doesn't determine the quality of a viewing experience, but it pushes you to engage more with certain kinds of things than others, if that makes any sense. Like if I'm watching a YouTube video of just somebody talking, I'd honestly rather watch it on my laptop. but something like this that was meant to be displayed in a larger context, it just works a lot better.
Oh, you mean projecting it?
Yeah, projecting it onto the wall. Basically, I'm just flexing that I set this thing up. I found the thrift store in my living room, but no, yeah, and I feel like when I was watching it on the small TV, I was having a hard time following and paying attention, I guess, because I guess like visually, the rest of the room is there. There's a lot of other things that are competing for your attention versus giant picture of Groucho Marx.
Yeah, it's pretty ornately designed sets for what's really just a bunch of jokes.
Oh yeah, it's like it's almost set up like a musical. There's only the two musical numbers, right, in the whole movie that I can think of. There's the thing in the beginning where you see stating the laws, and then the thing at the end where they're going to war.
There's all the way at the very beginning. There's when they're first waiting for him. The song that begins with "and the clock on the wall," when the clock on the wall strikes 10, goes on to the whole, "Hail, hail, Fredonia." Hail, hail, free. No. Yeah, that's right. Hail, hail, Fredonia, land of the free and brave. I think something like that.
Although I guess like for a musical of that time period,
only having 3 songs, hey, there's a whole musical.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have a huge number of songs. Like technically, there's this the first 3 talkie Ernst Lubitsch movies are pretty sure they're all technically considered musicals. The ones with Maurice Chevalier, so like Smiling Lieutenant, and I forget, there's a Criterion box set of those at one point, but there will be like long patches of dialogue. And then in the case of Maurice Chevalier, he can't actually sing. He's got all the charisma in the world, but he's basically just standing still in front of the camera, like kind of talking rhythmically to give you the idea that he's like trying to sing, but there's very little actual singing in those versus I think like a contemporary musical, it's meant more to be kind of a miniaturized version of like a Broadway production. So the emphasis is totally going to be on like one song to the next song. You're going to have like 2 hours straight of music. And a lot of, you could probably speak to this a lot better than I could, because I really have not watched a lot of contemporary. I think the last contemporary musical I saw was Chicago, the one with Richard Gere.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what you're trying to say. Why are you comparing? Why are you comparing Duck Soup to Chicago?
Oh, just because, like, by the standards of 1933, Duck Soup could have been filed as a musical.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's this thin line between a comedy and a musical at that point in time, and you would have a lot of films where it's like it's ostensibly a comedy, but there's a few musical numbers just jammed in there, like a lot of those early talkie Buster Keaton movies. They would pair him with Jimmy Durante, and then Jimmy Durante would inevitably play the piano for like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Sing something. And then I'm trying to think of like other early, like even the Astaire movies have a lot less, there's a lot higher dialogue to musical number ratio than you would see in most contemporary musicals.
And considering that this movie is only 1 hour and 9 minutes long, having 3 musical numbers in it that's pretty good.
Yeah, and that was probably most of the budget was those 3 musical numbers, because a lot of the stuff in the middle is like looks like it was fairly simple to produce beyond, getting the 3 Marx Brothers to show up and work.
They could have reused another set for all we know. In fact, for all of them except for the war scene, for the war scenes, they might have just been reusing other sets.
Yeah, and it kind of looks like they probably, for the scenes where the scenes at the beginning, I wouldn't be surprised if they're just completely reusing the set from some kind of historical drama.
Yeah.
That had come out a year beforehand, because it would fit better with the aesthetic, right? Like it's appropriation, montage, collage, like self-referencing media kind of stuff. And so it's almost funnier to borrow the set than to make a set.
Right. I mean, Presidential Palace, Romanov Castle, what's the difference?
Right.
So yeah, it totally could have been a set piece from a historical drama about the lives of the aristocracy.
Yeah, and the guy to ask about that would be Mark Rappaport. Mark Rappaport has this ungodly memory for what piece of furniture was used in what 30s and 40s movie, right?
Wait, is
Because
that
they're
that is it, which Cassavetes guy is that? Is that the guy that held on to the tapes, or is it the other guy?
Oh no, Mark Rappaport is the guy that Ray Carney, like, basically Mark moved to France and he was like, because Ray Carney was the only scholar in America that was really paying a huge amount of attention to. Jonathan Rosenbaum is into Mark Rappaport, but Carney was, I think, had a closer personal relationship with him at that time.
Carney's
Where
the one who took the tapes.
Yeah, so Mark basically gave him his digital masters. Carney put them in a barn.
Oh, they're Mark Rappaport's originals.
Yeah, there was movies.
Oh, they're Mark. Okay, all right, all
They're
right, all right.
digital, high quality digital transfers he had made of his early films.
Nothing to do with John Cassavetes. I'm confused.
Uh, well, Kearney is mostly known to the general public, if he is known at all, as this expert on John Cassavetes because he wrote a lot of books on John Cassavetes.
Okay, same guy, but I was merging two things with him. One,
Same guy, yeah. He didn't steal
Cassavetes
any of
expert.
John Cassavetes' films that I know of, but and eventually Mark Rappaport's stuff did get posted on Fandor and new digital transfers were made. It was just like a giant pain in the ass.
All right, so sorry. So now going back around, what was Mark Rappaport's connection to the Marx Brothers?
Oh, so Mark has this unbelievable memory for what piece of furniture was used in what shot in any classic Hollywood movie. And he's written a few essays where he's just talking about like the life of this piece of furniture through like 10 years of movies.
Oh, okay,
You
interesting.
know, like put the pictures there. I helped him put together a book, which actually it's a great book. It was a lot of fun to read, and hopefully my contributions were helpful. I mean, I was contributing mostly like formatting. I was trying to turn it into an ebook, and I think I overestimated my ebook formatting skills and what you could actually do in an ebook.
Uh-huh.
But it's called The Moviegoer Who Knew Too Much, and anybody who likes thinking about old Hollywood stuff, it's like creative short fiction, but from like very strange vantage points. So there's a story from the first person perspective of the guy who was in the Creature in the Blue Lagoon suit or in the
Uh-huh.
Black Lagoon suit. There's I think I'm trying. I mean, this was in college that I helped with this, but I think there's like a first person story from the perspective of Rita Hayworth, and he just has this like encyclopedic knowledge of this shit so he can inhabit the stuff.
Uh-huh.
Highly recommend checking it out.
Okay.
But back to Duck Soup.
Yeah, Duck Soup.
Duck Soup. There would probably, I mean, a lot of the costumes in this, I'm sure they probably just took from other productions.
Oh, I found. So I'd read a book about Duck Soup years ago, and I was trying to remember what it was, and I remembered very little of it, except probably the bit about Margaret Dumont and
Not getting the jokes.
Yeah, I probably learned that from there. The book is called Hail, Hail, Euphoria, Presenting the Marx Brothers in Duck Soup, the Greatest War Movie Ever Made, by Roy Blount Jr.
What's the name?
The author's name?
Yeah, author's name.
Roy Blount Jr.
Okay.
He was a comic essayist. Is that, I don't know what the right word, writer, humorist?
Humorist.
He might still be alive. Yeah, he's still alive. Huh.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Anyways, so it turns out I bought it. I was looking for it and I couldn't find it on my bookshelf, and I thought that I got rid of it during the Great Book Purge. When I went from 1,000 books to 100, but no, I have it on Kindle.
Oh, nice.
So I
So
bought it.
you never had a physical; you just had a digital copy of it.
Yeah. I forgot about that. There was a period in which I was one reading and two reading digitally. And then eventually I realized, I prefer to for those rare occasions when I do read, I prefer to have a physical copy.
Yeah, I never could get used to it because, like, if I could get used to like a tablet reader thing with the e-ink,
Uh-huh.
like I would. I mean, if having too many books has really been one of the defining joys and difficulties of my life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm sure if you cut down from 1,000 books, you probably know what I'm talking about. Like there's a point where enough is enough, but you also like don't want to. There's also like stuff where it's like if it's not here, I'm gonna forget this thing exists, or I need to reference this, or it's like filled with a bunch of notes that I took on whatever.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah, I don't miss the 900 books. It was really hard, and it felt like cleaving part of me. But I don't miss them. And now it's like, oh yeah, I've got plenty. I've got plenty of books here that are collecting dust. So instead of 900 books, 1,000 books collecting dust, I've got 100 books collecting dust. Excuse me.
I think it's interesting that he's saying, and I think I would kind of agree with him on this point that it is one of the greatest war movies ever made, and I think that potentially opens up another avenue of discussion, which is kind of taking this as a war movie, relative to. I mean, because generally, I don't really care for war movies at all.
Yeah, and I have a hard time thinking of this as a war movie, but I
Like
guess
if it's
it is.
about anything, it is about like war, and it's sort of like an incredibly broad satire of like all of this is bullshit.
Right, because what leads to the war is just is
Is a
petty.
rich lady having a crush on a lunatic.
Yeah. Well, no, indirectly, because that's what puts him in power. That's true. That's true. But it's directly, it's the lunatic and the power hungry would be conqueror
Hmm.
that it's the disagreement between them that leads to war. And an insult, one word, upstart. The word upstart.
Right. I think in terms of war movies, it's very interesting in that we never get any particular. The closest thing we get to an image of the actual citizens of Fredonia is that peanut vendor, and he's not shown as having anything to do with the war. None of the fighting is glamorous or heroic in any way, shape, or form. None of the motivations are. I mean, they barely make sense, much less have some kind of like nobility to them. And I think that's a lot of what has disturbed me about the war films I have seen over the years. Like all the like Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, the Pacific, that kind of stuff. Like a lot of it is about you're walking this thin line between honoring the dead and making excuses for the war or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I feel like a lot of, or like 300, 300 is a war movie. And a lot of what the audience ends up taking away, and I think I'm kind of parroting Francois Truffaut here. Truffaut said that there is no such thing as an anti-war movie because the audience, no matter what, sees the war as being more exciting than their own lives.
I
Something to
disagree.
that effect.
I disagree, but keep going.
Well, and I think if you were going to make an anti-war movie, you couldn't really. Duck Soup is a pretty good template, and I think of the war movies that I've respected, most of them do tend to just sort of they're kind of random and chaotic. Because even in like a film where it's like, oh, I'm making this tragic sacrifice, and you see the person go through something unpleasant at the end of the film, they get shot, they get killed or something. There's still this sense of they've discovered meaning and purpose in their lives to some extent in a way that a lot of the general public never does. And so to me, that feels kind of dangerous. And I think like a lot of the films that have tried to like honestly with Duck Soup in terms of as a political document, the intent seems very similar to like Apocalypse Now, right? Apocalypse Now, it's all this big lead up to meeting Marlon Brando. He's a complete lunatic. All of it was stupid and pointless.
Right.
But everything up to that, you have this like ritualized, like, oh, the stuff looks cool. And there are references to the pointlessness. You got like the Robert Duvall character like talking about loving the smell of napalm on the beach
In the morning.
in the morning. You got the guys surfing, which is, you know, this big contrast with the bombs and stuff and the gore. But even there, like I rewatched that a few years ago, and a lot of that movie does not hold up.
But wait, in the framework that you were describing, why doesn't, what's the problem with Apocalypse Now? You're putting it in the same category as
Oh
all
no,
the
no,
other.
no! I'm saying Apocalypse Now is like it's closer to Duck Soup than it is to say Saving Private Ryan.
Okay.
Because like Saving Private Ryan, on the one hand, you have this incredibly realistic recreation of Normandy. On the other hand, it's ultimately a movie about men proving their manliness by doing melodramatic things in a manly context.
Okay.
And that's what the audience is taking away from it. And the fact that it's set in World War II, I think like setting things in World War II, a lot of times the screenwriter or the director sees this as just sort of an easy out, right? Because that was the least ambiguous major war. Like there's not a lot of like World War One. If you made a movie about I mean, there are a few good movies about World War One. Most of them are silent movies.
If you're gonna
World
shit
War
on
One is
Saving,
much
if
more
you're gonna hold on,
Yep.
back up. If you're gonna shit on Saving Private Ryan, you've got to finish explaining why you're shitting on Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, the fact that it just sort of it's furthering that Greatest Generation crap.
Mhm.
It's furthering the this notion that World War II is like the safe war to have your kind of male violence fantasies about, fantasies of proving your worth through acts of violence and courage or whatever. You see that a lot more in like how Spielberg sentimentalizes a lot of the war in Band of Brothers because he has a much larger canvas to do it on.
Uh-huh.
Band of Brothers, I hate. I can't stand that series, but because it is just sort of this like war is its own good, or war is an end unto itself because it allows men to prove their valor and worth,
Gotcha.
which I think is not a good value to train. Like war is a pretty awful. War is usually the result of a few rich people getting into an argument and then sending a bunch of people with better shit to do out to die horrific deaths in a place they've never been to. And I think World War One, that was a lot more obvious versus World War Two. The war seems far more justified in retrospect than any of the other major conflicts of the 20th century because of the fact that, you know, the Holocaust and Nazis, basically.
Right.
Whereas World War One, it's just a bunch of rich guys fighting over territory.
Right. Over very little territory at that.
Yeah, and like the closest we get to that are some of those Vietnam movies, or the closest we get to an exploration of the meaninglessness of war, or some of those Vietnam movies. But even there's this confusion of, there's this sense that if you point out the senselessness of the war, it's in its entirety in stark, unforgiving terms. You're disrespecting the dead in some capacity, which I don't agree with. But Duck Soup, to go back to Duck Soup,
Wait. Hold on. I was trying to bring this up earlier. Have you ever seen Paths of Glory?
Yeah, I was going to bring up Paths of Glory.
Okay.
It's still working within that framework, I think, by reversing it. I think it's certainly it's better than a lot of other war films, certainly more than I mean, I can't think of a good pro-war film.
No, wait, but you're saying that Paths of Glory still falls into that into the trap that you were describing.
It's still working in that dichotomy.
Really? You think so?
I haven't seen it in 12 years though, so I could be totally wrong. Like I have vague memories of impressions I had of it. I could not tell you the plot of that movie. I remember liking it when I saw it, but you know, I also saw it like a really long time ago.
Okay, I think you need to rewatch it. I don't think it falls. I don't think it falls under the framework that you were describing.
It might not.
War as a tool is all about futility and well, yeah, I don't know, whatever. I'm
Well,
gonna
maybe
cut that level.
we can cover it. Yeah, we haven't done a Kubrick movie yet.
We haven't? No way.
No, we haven't done a Kubrick movie yet.
Okay. All right. We had talked about grabbing one of the early unknown ones, but
Hmm.
this is a good one to every time I watch it, it's a different it's different from the way I remember it.
Hmm.
Which also to the point of, is this as good as I remember it? So
Yeah, I remember Kirk Douglas being good in it. I remember the end of it. Like, it makes this overt point. I don't remember it as well as I remember something like Abel Gantz's Jacuz, which is, for me, that's the ultimate World War One movie. That was released in, I think, 1919. It's by the guy who did the 3-screen version of Napoleon. That's mostly what he's known for. But I got lucky. They screened it at the MoMA. I have no idea where you would find this movie commercially now. They remastered it, so it's possible there was a home video release afterwards. But it's this guy who freshly remembers World War One, kind of just making as close to a realist statement about World War One that you could make at that point. There's this really incredible sequence towards the end where all the dead people on the battlefield, the guy's just walking. I think he's on his own. He's got his bayonet, and the dead people just kind of start walking again, and they're pointing at him, and they're like, "Jacuz, Jacuz."
this has nothing to do with Emile Zola and the Dreyfus affair?
It might have.
Because that would have been like 15, 20 years before World War One.
I feel like it was about World War One.
Huh.
Again, I saw this about 8 to 10 years ago, and I've never seen another copy of it pop up. But
who's the filmmaker?
Abel Gance, Abel space Gance. Jacuz. Yeah, 1919. Oh yeah, okay. No, it's about World War One. It's 1919. It juxtaposes a romantic drama with the background of the horrors of World War One, and it is sometimes described as a pacifist or anti-war film. Some of the scenes were filmed on real battlefields. Okay, yeah, the film's powerful depiction of wartime suffering, and particularly its climactic sequence of the quote "Return of the Dead" made it an international success in 1919. So not necessarily a financial success in 2020, but
and this is right after the war ends.
Right after the war ends, so it's like fresh in everybody's memory. I mean, I think The General is a pretty great war film in a subtle way too.
Yeah.
Just because, like, and this is the thing that Dennis Grunis pointed out, that R.I.P. You know, he was. I don't know how we do it, but I would like to do a Dennis Grunis tribute episode at some point, because I think he was America's greatest living film critic until he died a few years ago. But nobody seemed to know who he was.
That's because Leonard Maltin was the true greatest critic.
Right. There was no star system. There was just a lot of very short but very insightful reviews of like anything and everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. But he points out that The General is it's deflating this whole idea of the guy gets the girl narrative and all these things, deflating the idea of any kind of heroics. Basically, this girl flirts with Buster Keaton and then he sends himself off to die in the war. Uh-huh. If you're like doing a 2-sentence summary of the movie. Of course, there's all these gags and stunts with the titular train, but at the end of it, there's not really anything. Well, I guess there's Keaton's own charisma, which kind of works at counter purposes to that. But at the same time, he looks like kind of sad and doomed all the time. So,
wait, actually, you're saying now. Step back a moment. You're saying that The General is an anti-war film?
Yeah, it's like very subtly. Let me find it. It's Dennis Grunis pointed it out. I didn't notice it when I watched it. I was just sort of like, oh, you know, it's Buster Keaton doing Buster Keaton stuff. Because I watched that way back in high school. I haven't seen that in a while. The General Keaton. Let's see. Hopefully his webpage is still up. Here we go. And, oh yeah, he says that it's the one indisputable masterpiece about the Civil War. see. The girl tells Johnny, aka Buster Keaton, this is Dennis Grunis talking, not me. She won't accept him into her heart again until she sees him in uniform. Translation, until he is more like father and brother. This grotesque failure of hers to fathom the horrible nature of war spins ironically throughout the film. And when finally Johnny is indeed in uniform, it is left to us to grasp Keaton's closing irony. Johnny's likely fate in the war has only just begun. It is unlikely that Johnny will come marching home again, and if he does, he will be transformed by the experiences of killing and defeat.
But that's not in the movie. That's
Uh,
yeah, you can imagine, okay, here's what happens in real life.
This is true.
But that's not part of the that's not where the movie is headed.
Well, that's the last sentence of the review. Here, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
He extrapolates his point a bit better in the first few. But I think it is kind of telling that she's like, oh, you're not a man until you're in uniform, and then it's the one film where he's not actually with the girl at the end that I can remember. He just sort of like gets off the train alive.
Okay.
Certainly a better movie about the Civil War than, say, Birth of a Nation or Gone with the Wind, but
a more
well, I guess I haven't
palatable,
seen Gone with the Wind, so maybe I don't know, but
it's a more palatable Civil War movie than Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind.
yeah, because like other Civil War movies I've seen, I mean, there's like good stuff in the movie Glory, like the whole thing about racism in the Union Army.
Yeah.
I guess it's not really a topic that's a specialty of mine though, because I just like wasn't that crazy about war movies early in life, so I never really went out and watched a ton of them.
So this is your idea of a war movie because of that.
Yeah, this is my
You've
idea.
shunned war movies, so this is, as far as you're concerned, this is what they're all like.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like Doctor Strangelove has a lot of the same vibes if we're going back to Kubrick, right? Like everybody's crazy, none of it really means anything. You got that like very Freudian shot of this nuke coming out of between the guy's legs at the end. Actually, it's like doubly Freudian because it's a dream of flying and it's a like obvious penis substitute. Which I imagine that was probably intentional. I can't imagine that living in the time he did, Kubrick didn't at least have a passing interest in Freud.
Sure.
But yeah, I couldn't tell you a lot about the history of war movies.
Right. So what else do you have to say about Duck Soup?
It's still funny, still worth watching. There's a lot of exciting stuff there, and I mean, what do you have to say about it? I mean, it's in your top 22.
Yeah, I probably watch this movie about once a year, or if I'm once in a long while, if I'm feeling really down, I'll put this on, and that'll knock it out. I have to make sure not to overdo it because I don't want to create negative associations with the movie. Yeah, I think it's funny. I think it's funny, and I forget that it has any serious component to it, that the fact that they're going to war. Because of
I think to me that's like a huge part of it because of that. Because of the timing, right? Like this movie was conceived right as Hitler was ascending in Germany, and also after everybody was like still very kind of traumatized and tired out from the First World War, and you can see a lot of that in there. I think people were more prone or more likely to say that war was meaningless between World War I and World War II, I think, than after World War II. So a lot of the less or more uncompromising statements on the subject seem to be filmed in that period.
Okay.
But on the other hand, you do have this you have this like frantic comedic. You have three very talented people that really, really want to entertain you, and they're like going all out for an hour, 10 minutes.
Three very talented brothers and their brother.
Right, right. Three very talented brothers, and the one that their mother probably got along with better.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
The accountant. No, I
the
don't know. What was
accountant.
Gummo?
Yeah,
What was Gummo?
Gummo was Harmony Korine's muse.
I don't get it.
Harmony Korine is
Oh,
the
yeah,
guy who
yeah, yeah,
directed
yeah.
Gummo. Yeah.
Got it, got it. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think you mentioned Gummo, like the movie Gummo, like I don't know, every 3 episodes, not every other episode.
Oh yeah, that movie like left a huge impression on me
Yeah, yeah.
in the day. I mean, it's
Maybe one day we'll have to watch that. As part of our ongoing Marx Brothers series, we'll watch Gummo.
right. That'll be the
Is there a
yeah.
movie
That's a
called,
pretty disturbing movie. Did you ever see that one?
how many movies do you know called Groucho? Is there any called Harpo or Chico? No, but not even Zeppo. But there is a Gummo.
There were books though. There's a book called Harpo Speaks. That's
I read.
pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I might have that on Kindle, or I might have a hard copy somewhere. That was another book. Did you know that Harpo Marx was part of the Algonquin Roundtable?
I don't actually know what the Algonquin Roundtable is.
Oh, it was a number of authors and critics and um, and folks who were Dorothy Parker. Let's see, the movie. There was a movie called Dorothy Parker and the Vicious Circle. I think that's what it's called, and in which they all sat around and talked about stuff and lots of witty repartee and I don't know what else. I don't know how to describe it.
Cocktails, maybe.
What was that? And cocktails, lots of cocktails. It was at the Algonquin. And I don't know. I'm not giving it justice. I'd have to like look up here, like what was the Algonquin Round Table? Near completed it. The Algonquin Round Table, also called the Round Table, an informal group of American literary men and women who met daily for lunch on weekdays at a large round table in the Algonquin Hotel in New York City during the 1920s and 30s. Started off as a practical joke. So he was part of it. He was one of these literary notables, Harper Marx of all people. Anyways, that was a fun book to read. That was fun, and we get some insight into what it was like growing up in the Marx family and as one of the Marx brothers as a kid. So.
And I don't think Zappo ever wrote. There is an autobiography by Groucho too called Groucho and Me.
Yeah.
I don't know if Harpo ever wrote anything, but I am far from an expert on the Marx brothers.
Now I'm curious if there's a book just about Zeppo. There's a Britannica entry for him.
All right.
There's a Britannica entry for Zeppo, but it pretty much just says, see Marx Brothers.
The other one.
Yeah. It's main reference, Marx Brothers. Also, Duck Soup. He's listed as under the cat. Oh, his birth name is Herbert Marx. So, anyways, yeah. So, Harper Speaks was a fun book. I didn't read the Groucho one. So, anyways, so I'm glad we talked about this. One of my favorite films.
Yeah.
And just fun all around.
Yeah, and I think this was like a good tonal break after we've been tackling some like some stuff that's like a bit more
weighty.
I don't want to say weighty. I mean, they're dealing with life, death, war, government, politics, and stuff, but it sits heavier in the stomach. Stuff that's a little bit there's a bit more there's more butter in it, I guess. I don't know, or cheese. You're more likely to get blocked up.
Oh,
I don't know. Like I think of this stuff kind of like food, right? Really, but yeah, stuff that's less willing to play ball. How about that? That seems like a fair.
Okay. Well, this movie is playing ball with you, and it's like, you know what? Let me make it easy for you. I'm just going to play ball with myself. Or here, we're going to show you how the game works. Yeah. Yeah. It's just fun. It's just a fun movie. So
it is a fun movie, and
so now we can move on to something not fun.
I don't know. I think Maidstone is it's going to be fun. It's like weird. It's really weird, but it's not like inaccessible. It's just for some reason. Although I still gotta. I probably shouldn't be talking about this on the show, but I did contact Carl, so I just got to figure out when to set that up. But
okay, I'll cut that out.
And then what else do we got coming up? What else were we gonna try doing Shop Around the Corner at some point as like a Christmas episode.
With You've Got Mail.
Oh yeah, with You've Got Mail, yeah, because you can't have one without the other for sure.
No, it's a double feature.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's some things to look forward to.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note,
this has been Dan,
and this has been Ron,
and that was Duck Soup, and also the Anomaly Questionable Movies podcast.
It was the Anomaly Questionable Movies podcast episode about Duck Soup.
In case you missed the last hour or so.
Yeah, you like the way those things kind of like intertwine, the way they kind of come together.
Yeah, if you were like skipping ahead to the spoiler, this episode was about Duck Soup.
Yeah. So now you can decide whether to go and listen to it. Because it did take 5 minutes to say the name of the movie. So that's fair.
Right, and we're just kind of presuming that you all can read the description things, but we don't want to discriminate. So
yeah.
We're doing speech descriptions of the episodes.
Of a spoken word episode.
For the literary impaired. Yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right, take care, everyone.